Forgive me if I lose my voice while recording this or if I sound really sick. I do unfortunately still have a sinus infection at the time that I'm recording this. Moving forward, today we are going to be talking about stonemasons and Freemasons, which I labeled the history, symbolism, and attempts to crush a movement. The history of Freemasonry. Before we get into specifically the temples, I think we should dig into the history of Freemasonry, and you'll have to forgive me because there is much more. In fact, the topic of temples will be nearly all the way at the end. I guess the first thing I should state is that it's a fraternal organization originating from stonemasons, and that also masons and non masons have helped spread misinformation from some of the earliest years of the group. With that being noted, we can go into this with a bit of scrutiny and do our best to discern while also recognizing there's much we will not know. Continuing on, the earliest texts in the history of Freemasonry all involve some history of the craft of masonry. The oldest known work of this sort is called the Halliwell Manuscript, dated sometime between 1390 and 1425. The document includes a brief history in its introduction, illuminating that the craft began in Egypt with Euclid and made its way to England under the rule of King Athelstan. Forgive me, I probably am going to say so many of these words wrong between 924 and 939. Matthew Cook manuscript claims masonry descends from the Jabal son of Lamech, Genesis chapter 4 verses 20 through 22, and that the knowledge of masonry came to Euclid from him, then on to the children of Israel while they were in Egypt, and through an elaborate path to Athelstan. This origin myth formed the foundation of future manuscripts and all tracing masonry to biblical time. Many future works retold, enlarged, and expanded upon the Masonic myth of creation. There are speculative histories as well, with the specific names and items listed as cause for speculation. Anderson's histories of 1723 and 1738, Ramsay's romanticization, combined with the internal allegory of Masonic ritual, focused on King Solomon's temple and its architect Hiram Abiff, all added to suspicion. The earliest ritual known placed the first Masonic lodge on the porch of King Solomon's temple. Anderson also led cause to follow a trace from Freemasonry to Euclid, Pythagoras, I probably said that wrong, even though I know Pythagorean theorem, Moses, the Essenes, and the Chaldees. Ramsay included the introduction of Crusader Masons, and the Knights Templar became involved in the myth. The anti Masonic writings of Christopher Frederick Nicolai also implicated Francis Bacon and the Rosicrucian Order. In John Robinson's work, Proofs of a Conspiracy, accusations were made that Freemasonry has been infiltrated by Weishaupt's Order of the Illuminati. However, the lack of scholarship Robinson showed that work led Encyclopedia Britannica to denounce it. Modern studies emerge. George Kloss studied the history of Masonry and published Geschichte der Freimaurerei, I probably butchered that, in England, Ireland, and Scotland in 1847, but it was never translated. And in 1866, when Findle's History of Freemasonry was translated from German to English, there were already active writers on the subject in England and Scotland. Woodford, active writer from England, then acted as Findle's guide when he visited York to inspect manuscripts and later worked to collect, date, and classify old manuscripts. Albert Mackey was similarly active in his studies in America, with published works starting in 1844 and continuing to 1874. Interest and participation in Masonic studies grew, and in 1886, the first lodge dedicated to Masonic research was opened in London. Master Mason studies in medieval England. For a child to become a master mason in medieval England, he would first leave home at 9 or 10 years old, already literate in both English and French. From that point until he reached 14 years old, he would attend monastery or grammar school to learn Latin or page in a knightly household, essentially an apprenticeship. Alongside his studies, at the ages of 14 to 17, he would learn the basic skills of stonework, and between 17 and 21, he would learn and memorize a number of formal geometry problems. Then 3 years as a journeyman, worker, and submission of a master work focusing on a specific problem in construction or design. Thenceforth, he was qualified but would have to progress within his career to attain the status of master mason on a larger project. Master masons appear in record in authority over major works and often became wealthy and respected. Often, when visiting, they sat at and dined with the abbot, from the Aramaic word abba, meaning father. The Reformation. Historically, medieval masonry had two levels of organization, the lodge and the guild. The word lodge was originally used to mean a workshop on the site of a major work, but it later gained the definition of being a community of masons in a particular place. The guild was a word imposed upon fellowships of medieval tradesmen. They were late in forming those bodies. The main employment of masons in England was forced recruiting from the crown as needed. The Halliwell manuscript mentioned earlier, otherwise known as the Regius Poem, was potentially seen in response to legislation following the Black Death. Edward III had attempted to fix wages at pre-plague levels, and in 1425, Henry VI, through the Labourers Act of 1425, banned the annual assemblies of Masons. Masonic regalia emerged in a glimpse through John Cadeby around 1450. He had several girdles, two of which were silver mounted, with one having the letters B and I, indicated of Boaz and Hakin, the twin pillars of Solomon's temple. Cadeby also owned a writing table and six English books, which made him quite well off and literate. Yet the following century and a half had produced very few manuscripts. During this time is when the Reformation occurred. It was assumed that the church was the major employer of masons, and with the dissolution of monasteries, lodges disappeared. It's also believed that guilds were abolished in 1547, and the government continued to employ masons, and they eventually grew from a fellowship to a corporation. Totalitarian regimes. Just keep in mind there's also a lot more between the 1500s and 1900s, but if I just stuck to all the history, I'd never get to the points I'm attempting to make. Nonetheless, some background and grounding are always important. Moving on, many totalitarian regimes, including both fascism and communism, have treated Freemasonry as a potential opposition. This is due to its secret nature and international connections, not even beginning to dive into the religious and political tolerance it promotes and its symbolism. It makes sense that a dictator wouldn't want a group like that around. Some Masonic scholars even allege that a lot of the language used by totalitarian regimes is like that of the more modern critics of Freemasonry. Wikipedia Contributors 2020. Now, this is not to say that there aren't other issues that sometimes arise in fraternities like this, but solely on the basis of what it claims it attempts to promote, this makes a lot of sense. Interesting details about the group. Freemasonry is the largest worldwide secret society. They are an oath-bound group devoted to fellowship, moral discipline, and mutual assistance, remaining most popular in the British Isles with estimated worldwide membership of 2 to 6 million. They only admit men, but some sects like the Co-Freemasonry or Les Droits Humains in France both admit men and women. Britannica Editors 2024. Other groups like Job's Daughters, established with assistance from Freemasons and members of the Order of the Eastern Star. Women, but only so long as they are directly related to a Master Mason or are sponsored by a majority member of Job's Daughters and a Master Mason. Job's Daughters International is not a formal Masonic lodge, but in its membership requirements, historical foundation, rituals, guiding principles, and moral teachings, it is intimately connected with Freemasonry. GotQuestions.org 2011. Freemasons are not only the largest worldwide secret society, but also the oldest fraternal organization. History.com author Jessica Pierce Rotundi states, "It isn't a secret society in and of itself," Pierce Rotundi 2020. However, Britannica labels a secret society as those that conceal at least some of their rituals, customs, or activities from the public, not necessarily their membership or existence. Britannica Editors 2024. Furthermore, stating that they may use secret initiations, oath handshakes, or other signs of recognition. Secrecy elements can include a password, elaborate rituals, private language, costumes, and symbols. Britannica Editors 2025. Rotundi goes on to say that their symbols aren't what you think they are. This is likely true for those new to the topic, but the ones she lists are generally well known. Also, I'm not saying that to be rude or holier than thou, simply that this resource is a bit service level and we've still got much deeper to go. We'll go into some of the symbols a little bit here shortly with the resource I found, but keep in mind the credibility of 100% certainty is not something I can guarantee from outside of a group. Next, the source states that there are secret handshakes. In fact, there are several. The Catholic Church forbids its members from being Freemasons. This can be found in a deeper dive of the history of the group as well, because many organized religions were in direct contrast and tried to bring down the group altogether. In 1983, the church declared that those who held Masonic associations are gravely sinful and may not receive Holy Communion. In the political world, the first third party was created against Masons. In 1828, the Anti-Masonic party, formed due to fears that the group was too secretive and too powerful. Members even theorized that Masons had murdered someone to keep the victim from revealing secrets. Atheists are not allowed to be Freemasons in many countries, and even African American Masons are not recognized in many Grand Lodges in the United States. Lastly, she states famous Freemasons George Washington, Master Mason, Benjamin Franklin, founding member of the First Lodge in America, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Gerald Ford, Winston Churchill, Wolfgang Amadeus, Mozart, Davy Crockett, Duke Ellington, Nat King Cole, Henry Ford, Paul Robeson, and Buzz Aldrin were all Masons. Pierce Rotundi 2020. 32 symbols and their meanings. I said I would go into some of the symbolism, and now I intend to. I like the quote first listed about how Freemasonry is a system of morality. The author then goes on to state that the symbols are up to interpretation by each Mason, and due to that, their meanings are diverse and personal. Then listed are all the symbols. I'm going to list a brief description underneath each item to try and condense it slightly, but you're more than welcome to skip over this or just read what catches your eye or just, whatever you aren't particularly interested in. It's completely okay. Acacia symbolizes the immortality of the soul, the innocence, purity, initiation, and the symbol of resurrection. The all seeing eye or eye of providence is God, the great architect of the universe, is constantly observing all deeds, actions, and thoughts. The square encompasses. The square represents the golden rule, applying the teachings of conscience and morality. The compass is the boundary between desires and passion, self restraint and control. Combined, it serves as a reminder to explore personal desire and passion while maintaining a moral compass. The letter G, there's multiple theories. It could mean God, geometry, gnosis, or the letter G in Hebrew, as it has a numeric value of 3. Cable tow represents the pledge to the craft, vow of fulfillment to the highest capacity, the cord that unites mother and child. Unconditional love replaces the physical tie at birth, just like a man's vow replaces the toe. Masonic blazing star means the peak of the journey, God shining his light upon us, God's omnipresence, the sun as it gives everything life, the Star of Bethlehem, and the spiritual path for each Mason, and prudence. The Masonic gavel remains morally pure and away from societal vices or authority. Masonic lambskin apron is innocence, purity, commitment to ideals, an entrance to brotherhood, reminder of dedication, ongoing journey to personal and ethical improvement, and the promise to uphold core values. Anchor and the ark, hope and peace in the face of adversity. Anchor represents hope, the ark represents the journey of life, and combined act as reassurance that they will come to a place free from wickedness. Ark of the Covenant, made of acacia, housed the Ten Commandments and later used as God's promise to David, housed in Solomon's temple, symbolizes fraternity, unending forgiveness of our sins, and that while the fraternity teaches Masons to do good, following God's commandments will help them do better. Masonic shoe, faithfulness, especially to spouse or partner, remembrance, the vow to always be true, supportive, and ensure the welfare and honor of family and Masons. The beehive, all efforts for one purpose, working to achieve a common goal, cooperation, work, and virtue. Coffins, death of a previous life. Masonic sheaf of corn. In King Solomon's time, taxes were paid with corn, and master masons received a sheaf of corn, wine, and oil as wages. The symbol represents the rewards of hard work and the importance of charity. 47th problem of Euclid Pythagorean theorem. Euclid was the father of geometry, and the symbol is the ratio 3:4:5. It means living life in order. Masonic pavement, a bond uniting all members. Pre-existing bonds need to be strengthened and maintained. Care and providence. King Solomon's temple was also said to have flooring that incorporated black and white pavements. Trestle board, like a blueprint, this symbol represents the plan a Mason has for their life. Two-headed eagle / eagle of Lagash, symbol of the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite, a completed process of alchemy and the reconcilement of matter and spirit. Two Masonic pillars, Boaz and Hakin, in him is strength and he establishes. In Freemasonry, the symbol of two pillars represents opposite pairs, good and evil, light and dark, active and passive, positive and negative, yes and no, out and in, man and woman, and life and death. Moon rebirth through alchemy, Newtonian training, and the process of purification. The Masonic trowel, symbol of a master worksman spreading love within the craft and sharing peace and harmony with anyone the Mason interacts with. King Solomon's temple, some theories speculate that Solomon gave birth to the idea of this fraternity. Symbol of origin, and modern lodges are meant to be in its image. The Masonic hourglass, time and death, time moving forward, nothing can reverse the movement. Everyone is equal because not even riches can move the sand backward. Utilizing time before it's gone, time will catch up, and death is inevitable. The scythe, sometimes included with the hourglass, cutting life short, angel of death, destruction of time, end of time, immortality, everlasting souls, and death reconnects. The 24-inch gauge, 24 hours in a day, one for work, one third for God and society, and the last third for sleep and refreshing oneself. The level, equality, sharing goals and hope, equal respect and opportunity, and the importance of treating everyone equally. The Masonic keystone, 8 letters on the keystone, HTWSSTKS, stands for Hiram, the widow's son sent to King Solomon, referencing Hiram Abith, the main architect of King Solomon's temple, who was killed for not revealing secret Masonic passwords. Therefore, it stands as a symbol of loyalty. Point within a circle. Some versions of this symbol have a B on the right side and an E on the left for St. John the Baptist, B, and St. John the Evangelist, E. The point black dot represents an individual Mason, the circle a boundary between brotherly obligation to God and men. Personal desires, passion, or other interests shall not lead them away. The broken column, the demise of Hiram Abith in the incomplete work of Solomon's temple. Typically, the symbol includes a virgin weeping with acacia in one hand and an urn in the other, symbolizing living a virtuous life, faith, and assurance. Masonic pencil. Many do not hold symbolic meaning for this tool, but in Freemasonry, God is an artist, and the pencil serves as a reminder that God keeps note and will judge us upon our actions. Number 7. 7 is sacred in the Bible. Solomon built the temple for 7 years. It is also tied to Pythagoras, with 7 being noted as the perfect number as it is a sum of 3 and 4, the triangle and the square, symbolizing completion. 7 members are necessary for an ideal lodge: 3 master masons, 2 fellows, and 2 apprentices. Rough and perfect ashlar. Rough is an unprepared stone representing a mason's life before the craft. Perfect is shown a completely, thoroughly molded stone through work. A stone can only be used in construction after it has been shaped. No one is born a perfect stone, but through education, nurture, and focus on living morally, one can live properly. Masonic fine, no date. Masonic temples. The first Masonic hall was built in Marseille, France in 1765. However, most lodges could not build their own facilities due to lack of funds and would rent rooms above other establishments like hotels, banks, and opera houses. Temples and lodges became the people assembled and not the places of assembly. In more rural areas or smaller towns, the lodges could consist of a space for a single tenant, a small meeting hall, or no rental space at all. First Masonic Temples Freemasonry Network 2026. These were rooms for moral philosophy and a shared journey of men for self improvement. Masonic halls hold a range of activities like planning charitable activities or social events, to rituals of drama and symbolism to teach moral and philosophical lessons. A Masonic temple's happenings are not just one big secret or speculation, they maintain business, formal ritual, and social celebration. Esoteric Freemasons, no date. Closing remarks. Freemasonry isn't Illuminati meetings, it isn't something you'll get secretly invited to. Freemasonry also isn't a place to just sit around. It involves structure and discipline. Their real secrets are hidden in the lessons you have yet to learn. Cross 2025. People have come up with an absurd number of conspiracy theories about the group, and while those items stand to question something, every writing tells us something about the audience and author. I've repeated this a lot of times. The group isn't what these lists seem to propose. Nevertheless, a very curious study, and there is way more you can dig into, certainly, but I think I'm going to leave it here where there still feels like a cloud of mystery overhead. Now you know more than you knew. Like and subscribe for free today to get updates on future pieces, and all my references will be in the Substack and Patreon links in the description. I hope to see you in the next video.